Hello and welcome to Adventures into Odyssey. My name's Wyatt Jackson and I'm going to be your host. So, for today's episode, we're going to be talking about episode 306, A Victim of Circumstances. This episode was first aired March 18th, 1995, and it was written and directed by Phil Lawler. So, good on you, Phil Lawler. This episode has a lot less scenes than the previous episode, which I covered. It only has 8 total scenes. At least I think. Did I write that down? 8 total scenes. And each of those scenes is tightly packed with tons of stuff. So, without further ado, let's jump into the episode. So, first scene. We're at Whit's End and Jason's sitting in the darkness enjoying the skylight. And then Jack comes in, or he's just sitting in the darkness. It's in the Bible room. And this is a goof on the album cover, because on the episode, Jason says that he's in the office, but on the album cover, which, album 23, Twists and Turns, it shows Rodney falling through the skylight, but it's in the Bible room, because you see the imagination station. So, it's a goof on the album cover. It happens sometimes. Take battle lines. That's a goof, too. So anyway, getting back. So Jason's sitting in the Bible room, or the office, I don't know. He's sitting in a room in Whit's End, and it's dark, and he's just looking at the new skylight they put in. Then Jack comes in, and he's like, Jason, what are you doing? And Jason's like, oh, I'm just admiring the new skylight. And Jack's like, Jason, I hate to break it to you, but, like, it's dark glass. You can't really see anything. What are you doing? And then Jason's like, oh, I just like it. And then Jack's about to go when he hears something on the roof, and Jason hears it too. And then all of a sudden, Rodney crashes through the new skylight onto the floor, and really good sound engineering on this. Whoever sound designed it, you're amazing. You can really hear Rodney crashing through the glass, and then the thump as he lands on the floor, and, And so, they're like, what happened? Because, Jason's in the dark, and he can't see a thing. And so, Jason finds a flashlight, and they see it's Rodney Rathbone, and Rodney is just moaning away and, like, in pain, and it sounds really, good, sound engineering, kudos to them, and so he's moaning in pain, and he's saying his arm hurts, and so, Jason goes to call an ambulance, and Jack's like, oh, you've really done it this time, and yeah, his arm has a bad cut, and is bleeding. That's what I have in my notes, so, okay. That's all for the first scene. Then we transition to the hospital, and oh boy, what a scene. So, Jason and Jack are checking up on Rodney. They're visiting him at the hospital, and Bart says that Rodney has a broken arm and a light concussion, but that's it. And then Rodney's like, that's it! I could have hurt myself! And then Bart's like, don't be adults. And he's like, you were stupid, you got what you deserved, which, okay, I guess, fair enough. This episode has some serious, I don't know, I will, get on a big rant about this episode in a minute, so I'll keep going. So, Jason and Jack tell Rodney that he should be grateful that his arm and his head aren't worse, because it's quite a fall, if you think of it. I always imagine the Bible room as having, like, a vaulted ceiling, and if the skylight's on an angle, that's a pretty big fall, so. Anyway, and so, Jack asks more questions, and he finds out that Rodney was making a trap, because he found water balloons, and a string, and a jug of water up there. And then Rodney's like, yeah, there's a trellis, and it's on the side of Whit's End, and we go up there all the time, and, you guys should, like, I really hurt myself, and, I could have killed myself, and that's the point where Bart's like, don't be adult, Rodney, and, so, yeah. And so, Bart reprimands Rodney after that. He's like, don't be adult, anyone who is stupid enough to do, you got what you deserved, and things like that. So, good for Bart, at least right now. Bart gets a lot worse in the episode. So, Jack and Jason leave, and they're like, well, you've had enough punishment for today, and, we'll be back later when you're better and you can pay us for the skylight. And so they leave. And then Howard J. Wiesel. Actually, it's Wiesel. It's apparently French. bumps into Bart Rathbone. And so Howard J. Wiesel is voiced by Steve Bridges, the amazing voice actor who could do so many impressions. And he's a one-time character. He comes back in... Wait, let me check on the AO Wiki. Howard J. Wiesel... Okay, so Howard J. Wiesel was... This is his only true episode he was in, was a victim of circumstances, but he was also in 436, A Look Back, Part 2. And I don't consider that a true episode. So, okay, moving on. So Howard J. Wiesel, like, he's eavesdropping at the door, and then once they leave, he goes in, and he's like, I might be of help. I'm a lawyer. And Bart's like, they're not pressing charges, which... Oh, that's another point I forgot. So, Jason said, we're not pressing charges. Rodney's learned his lesson. And so Bart's grateful and all that. And then Wiesel bumps into them. And Wiesel's like, you might have a great lawsuit. And Bart's like, nah. Like, And then Wiesel's like, you could make a lot of money. And Bart's like, money? And he's like, how would you like to own Whit's End? And then Bart, and he's like, yeah. And then they both Bart and Rodney start chuckling. And then throughout this episode, there's also this ongoing joke with Wiesel. No one can pronounce his name. They first, literally everyone in this episode, they first say Wiesel, and then someone else says, I think it's Wiesel. And then Wiesel says, actually, it's Wiesel, it's French. Which I'm not sure if that is actually French, but whatever. It's funny. I like it. So then we go back to Whit's End, the third scene out of 8 scenes. So Jack is talking to Jason. Jason's called the glass repair company. The skylight will cost extra, and they can do it tomorrow. And then Jason's like, it'll be one more thing for Rodney to work off. Then Wiesel walks in and tells them he's an attorney at law, or he's a lawyer, and he's representing Bart. And they're like, what do you mean? And then he shows them this lawsuit. And immediately, both Jack and Jason are like, what? Like, and then they try to reason with him, but he's like, it's a lawsuit, and it's going to courts, like, in a few days, so have your lawyer look over it. And then he's like, have a good day, and he goes. And, like, this guy, this lawyer is, like, one of the most slimiest lawyers I've ever heard. Like, Steve Bridges did such an amazing job voicing this guy, because, like, he's awesome. I love Wiesel. He almost reminds me of Philip Glosson, but not that quite much. So anyway, the lawsuit is Rodney suing because of willful negligence on Jason's part, defamation of character, which I don't know how, and emotional duress. So I get the willful negligence part, but defamation of character, and it's kind of pushing it. But emotional duress, yeah, it could happen. And so Jason and Jack are both exceedingly angry, and Jack's like, I'm gonna go talk to Bart, and then Jason's like, yeah, and I'm gonna go talk to the lawyer. And so they both are fuming, and then so Wiesel leaves, and then Wiesel leaves before this, and then Jack and Jason are like fuming, and they say that they're gonna go to the lawyer, and yeah. And so the question I had with this is, do they both just leave Whit's End? Because presumably Whit's End has no more help. Like, they're the two people running it, so they're just, I don't know. It sounds like in the episode that they go there around the same time, but yeah. So anyway, Jack, fuming, leaves for the Electric Palace. And Jason, also fuming, goes to Fenimore Cooper, Whit's lawyer, who apparently is the best in the town. Fenimore Cooper. Yeah, so I don't know who watches Whit's End. Maybe they just close it up. Seems kind of weird, but oh well, whatever. So, next scene, scene 4, we transition to the Electric Palace. And Jack storms in, and Bart's ringing up another customer, Mrs. Jackson. And then Bart's like, bye, Mrs. Jackson. And Jack's like, goodbye, Mrs. Jackson. And then he starts, like, yelling at Bart, and Bart's like, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And then he stumbles over explanatory, which is amazing. Walker Edmiston, you do such a good job. Or you did. And so, I feel like in this thing, Jack is kind of being illogical. But, I mean, he's just furious. He's just angry. And then Jack is, like, trying to logically prove why this is a bad idea. And I feel like he almost, like, has Bart cornered in, like, logic. And then Wiesel jumps out. He jumps from behind the counter. What? So apparently Wiesel's just been hiding underneath. So wait, Bart would have had to known, but this you don't get the impression that Bart already knows that Wiesel's underneath the counter. And if it's like your regular grocery store checkout, which like Superstore, I'm Canadian. I don't know American grocery stores that well, but I don't know. It's just kind of weird. Like, Wiesel would have had to have alerted Bart earlier that he was down there. And then what if Jack didn't? I don't know. It's just kind of weird that Wiesel chose just to go and, like, go underneath a checkout lane, like, all day. But Wiesel jumps out anyway. He apparently has been hiding since he talked to Jack and Jason earlier. And then Bart's like, Wiesel! And Jack's like, Wiesel. And then Wiesel's like, actually, it's Wiesel. It's French. Which is amazing. Like, they keep this trope up within the whole thing. And this also shows that Bart doesn't know he's there. So, yeah, I don't know. It's weird. And so, he's protecting his client's interest. And he's super slick through this entire thing. Like, ugh. And then there's a quote that stuck out to me and I wrote it down. Jack's like, this is outrageous! And then Wiesel says, wait till I get started. You ain't seen nothing yet. And so then Jack warns Bart Rathbone that Wiesel is leading him to disaster. And then Wiesel's like, no. And then Wiesel says to Bart, no, don't speak. Mr. Allen was just going. And Bart's like, yeah, but And then Wiesel's like, no, don't speak. Mr. Allen was just going. And then, so, he kind of pushes Mr. Allen off. And then assumedly Bart and Wiesel are walking into the store, and you hear Bart trying to protest with Wiesel, but Wiesel's like, no, don't speak. Oh, and Wiesel also tells, Jack that anything, Wiesel tells Jack that anything Bart said in the hospital wouldn't hold up in court, which, fair enough, it probably wouldn't. So anyway, Jack storms out of the Electric Palace. And then we go to Fenimore Cooper's law firm. And so Jason's there with Fenimore Cooper. And then Fenimore Cooper, or the lawyer, tells Jason that Rodney has a good case. And Jason is also being illogical at this point. And Jason's like, what? And Fenimore Cooper's like, yeah. Rodney has a very strong case. And then Jason's illogical. And then he's like, but Rodney was trespassing. And then Fenimore Cooper's like, no he wasn't. You didn't have any signs or barricades. It was free. And so there's no sign, no barricades, and it happened before closing hours. And Jason's like, yeah, but common sense. And then the lawyer, and then Fenimore Cooper proceeds to just bash Jason. He's like, what's gotten into you, Jason? Like, dude. And then he makes a McDonald's reference. Fenimore Cooper. He's like, people win millions because they spill hot coffee on themselves. Which, in case you don't know, that was a McDonald's case that happened quite a few years ago. Lady spilt hot coffee on herself. Spilled McDonald's hot coffee on herself. Sued McDonald's, won millions. And now that's why they all say, caution, hot. So anyway, Jason calms down and he's like, so what should I do? And then Fenimore says, you should settle. And Jason's like, I don't like that idea. And he's like, it's the best legal advice I can give you, buddy. So then we cut to Whit's End. And Jack and Jason are talking. And Jason's actually considering settling. And Jack is like shocked. He's like, what? And then Jason says, I'd like to believe the justice system still works. Like, what? And then, so he says, well, I don't want to settle, but I'd like to believe the justice system still works, but on the other hand, I have to think about what's best for Whit's End. Okay, let's go let's go on a tangent for a second. I'd like to believe the justice system still works. What is that? What does that even mean? Like, this is a good case. Throughout the whole episode, they downplayed as frivolous, but it's actually a pretty good case. Okay? Like, this is a child. It's not like it's an adult. It's a child. There is nothing barricading this child, aka Rodney, from going up there. Like, apparently it's pretty easy to get up there, because lots of kids have apparently done it, because it's, like, been an initiation for the Bones of Wrath. I missed that earlier, but oh well. There's been no signs or obstacles. It's actually not a frivolous lawsuit, as Jack and everyone else thinks it is. It's a good lawsuit. Jason should, and Whit, to that matter, should have had, like, either it removed or there'd be, like, a no going up there, or, like, yeah, it's good. It's not like a stupid lawsuit. And so Jack is, like, flabbergasted, and he thinks it's silly. It really isn't. And so then he's like, what happened to personal responsibility and consequences? And I'm like, well, Jack, I mean, where was your personal responsibility? You had this hazard waiting to happen to the kids at Whit's End. It would have happened. There's been many kids who are up there. Like, yeah, what happened to your personal responsibility? And I get Rodney shouldn't have been up there at all, but, and then Jack's like, Bart and Rodney have never, had personal responsibility. Oof. Ouch. Ouch. Ow. Oh, Jack, come on. Like, okay. And then Jason's like, hey, let's program a Room of Consequence adventure. And Jack's like, yeah, except, we can't go near Bart or Rodney. And Jason's like, who said anything about Bart and Rodney? And the music comes in. Again, great sound engineering in this scene. You can hear the train room. It's like right around the corner, and you can really hear the train in this episode. It's amazing. Great sound effect. And so we cut. And then we cut back to Whit's End, but it's apparently been some time, because they've programmed this entire Room of Consequence adventure. And, like, the Imagination Station takes time to program, so I assume the Room of Consequence also takes a fair amount of time to program. And so apparently Jack and Jason called Wiesel, and they're like, hey, we got something related to the case, and we need to come over. So he does, and he's like, yeah, if you want to settle, we could have just, like, done it over the phone. And they're like, we're not settling. And he's like, why am I here? And they're like, we have some information on the case, which they don't. They lied about that. They don't have any information. And then Jason, he's like, welcome to the Room of Consequence. And they open the door and it's dark, and Wiesel's like, I'm not going in there. And so Jack's like, okay, I'll go with you. And so they go in, and he's like, why is it so dark? And Jack's like, oh, the lights will come on in a sec, which, yeah, that's a Room of Consequence established thing, that the lights never come on when you open the door. You always wait, and then the program starts. I'm not sure if it has lights or not. It's kind of weird. And so apparently it's dark, and then Jason and Jack just leave Wiesel. Like, they don't tell him, hey, something's happening. They just leave him, and then the adventure starts, and it's like the Room of Consequence thing. Very different from the Imagination Station. It's still great. I love the sound engineering with the Room of Consequence. And then, so, the Room of Consequence adventure starts, and Wiesel is in front of the courtroom, and there's the reporter named, where was it? Trent Mackey. Trent Mackey. Has Trent Mackey, been in this before? Voiced by Robert Spina, apparently, according to the AO Wiki. Nope. This is his only episode. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Trent Mackey. His only episode. Odyssey has had so many just random newscasters, it's funny. The newest one's Ted Humphries. Yeah. Anyway. So Trent Mackey's out by the courtroom, and he's like, yeah, Rodney and Bart have just won this case, and so, and then Rodney and Bart give like a thing, or Rodney does, and then they're like, let's talk to Wiesel, and then it's silent, and Wiesel's like, what do I do? And Jack's like, answer him. And so Wiesel does, and I didn't quote his entire answer because it's pretty long, but I just made 3 main bullet points. First thing is, there's no such thing as a frivolous lawsuit. The second point is, this is the American dream come true. The little guy who took on the big corporation, which Whit's End isn't really a corporation, but whatever. And then 3, I'm in your corner, and if you have a frivolous lawsuit, just tell me, and I'll be fighting for you. Oh, wait, there's no such thing as a frivolous lawsuit. Ah, well, whatever. So, the Room of Consequent Adventure goes out, and now he's like, what's happened? And Jack's like, people believed you, and Wiesel's like, they did? And Jack's like, yeah, they did. And so now everyone wants to represent Wiesel for stupid lawsuits. The first one is a lady stepped the wrong way on a curb and twisted her ankle, so she wants to sue. And a man wants to sue his paperboy for not putting the paper in the right place. Those are frivolous lawsuits. This one isn't really a frivolous lawsuit. Okay? Like, the curb can't help where it is, and the lady should have been watching. That's a frivolous lawsuit. This is not a frivolous lawsuit with Rodney. It is actually a good lawsuit, and it does show negligence on Jason's part, and on Whit's part, for that matter, for not barricading it up. And, so, anyway, so everyone wants him to do it, and then, so he has more calls than he knows what to do with, and, yeah. And then Wiesel, can't handle it all, and so people are like, I thought you'd be with me, fighting in my corner, and he's like, I can't do everything, I'm only human. And so they all, like, start chanting, sue Wiesel, and then Wiesel's like, no, I'll be ruined, stop. And then somewhere in the chanting changes to sue Wiesel, not Wiesel. He's like, it's Wiesel. And then Wiesel starts to have a nervous breakdown, and he's, like, yelling. And then the thing ends, and Jack's like, and Jason's like, are you okay, Wiesel? He's like, is it over? And Jack's like, yeah, it's over. He's like, what was that about? And Jack's like, well, we just wanted you to see how much it can hurt. Which, what? Oh, no, Jack says, we want you to see how much it can hurt to be on the receiving end of things. And I'm like, wait a minute. This Room of Consequence adventure was stupid. It didn't prove anything. They could have had so much better Room of Consequence adventures. This Room of Consequence adventure was trying to say, like, it's just, this adventure didn't prove anything on how it hurts to be in the receiving end of Wiesel's lawsuit. They're just like, yeah, it's a frivolous lawsuit, and it's going to keep growing, and then you've set a new standard for frivolous lawsuits, and I'm like, no, like, it's a bad Room of Consequence adventure. I didn't write too many notes other than that for the Room of Consequence adventure. Wiesel storms off, and he's like, I'm gonna sue you for defamation of character, emotional duress, and something else, which I didn't write down. And then, so, he storms off, and Jack's like, ugh. And so, the last scene, we go to outside the courtroom, and the Whittaker trial, and we get Trent, the wonderful reporter, Trent Mackey again. And then he's like, yeah, we're just waiting on the jury, and they're gonna make up their minds soon, and so we're gonna show both the prosecution's statements and the defendant's statements. And so we first go to Wiesel, and he has a pretty strong case. He's like, Whittaker was negligent. He should have had that wrapped up. Rodney's just a kid. He's like, he can't know any better. And so Rodney gets hurt as a result of Whittaker's negligence, and Whittaker shouldn't be like held to a higher standard than the rest of us, so we should sue him. And then Fenimore Cooper agrees to let Jack Allen go for the defendants. I'm like, oh, that was a bad move, Fenimore Cooper. And so the defendants, a.k.a. is Jason Whittaker and Whit's End. And so Allen's like, well, in my old days, we used to have something called personal responsibility and taking responsibility for your actions and living up to the consequences, and now everyone's a victim and blah, 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 and okay, I kind of get it, but at the same time, that's a pretty weak case in light of Wiesel's case. And then the outcome, and then so Trent Mackey cuts back. Those are just clips recorded earlier in the courtroom. And so the outcome of the case comes, and Trent Mackey's like, let's go to our camera inside. So we do. And the jury's reached a verdict, and the court's now in session, And so Jason Whittaker, the defendant, and Whit's end is guilty. And so Wiesel and Rodney and Bart, they're all like cheering, and then there's the order in the court thing with the gavel, and then they all be quiet, and he's like, Jason Whittaker, you have to pay the complete and total amount of $1. And everyone's like, what? Like, Rodney is like freaking out, and Bart's freaking out. And at first Wiesel's like, this is outrageous, we will appeal. And then the judge is like, you can, but a lot of courts are harsher than this one, and so if you appeal, you might be brought up before the bar. And then Wiesel's like, see you guys later, I'm out of here. And then Whittaker he doesn't leave yet. So Whittaker gives Rodney the $1, and then Wiesel's like, I'll take that $1 and just consider it a reduction of my fee. And Rodney's like, give me back my $1. And, Bart's like, we'll sue, and Wiesel leaves, and all that. And then Jack says, we'll never be able to operate Whit's End again the same as we used to. We gotta be extra careful from now on, because we lost some of our innocence, which, yeah, fair enough, you do. And Jason's like, yeah, let's start by putting up a sign that says, no climbing on the roof. Which, yeah, you really should have done that before. And then we get to the wrap-up. And Chris is like, yeah, it's about blaming others for bad behavior and taking responsibility. And then she quotes Genesis 3 when Adam blames Eve. And then she says, just like Adam blamed Eve, Rodney blames Jason for his bad behavior. But God knew better then, and he knows better now. And so she's like, take responsibility for your actions. And then we get the credits and we cut out. Oh, what an episode. I love this episode, and I very much dislike this episode at the same time. I listened to it a lot when I was younger because I had it on CD. And, yeah. Oh, first of all, the court case that Wiesel had was actually pretty darn good, okay? He had a strong court case against Jack Allen and Jason Whittaker in Whit's End. This whole episode tries to downplay the fact that Jason Whittaker was flawless. No, he wasn't. He should have put up if Rodney and a whole bunch of other kids have been up here, why isn't it more obvious to Jason? So Jason should have put up a sign or a barricade of some kind. So Rodney couldn't have done that. And, yeah, it's bad. Also, the fact that, and I get it, Rodney was in the wrong. He should not have been climbing up. It is common sense, but at the same time, yeah, Jason should have also taken responsibility for not closing up that thing, and Rodney should. Yeah, I just feel like this episode downplays that fact that Jason isn't like perfect either. They kind of ignore that fact and just like only say it's like Rodney, he didn't take responsibility for his actions and he got what he deserved. And Wiesel's gone and never to be heard from again, except in that one episode, which I don't consider true episodes. That is all my notes for this episode. So before I go, I have some exciting news. I'm going to start my first saga, reviewing my first saga after only 2 episodes. And the saga is the Leonard Meltsner saga. I have very fond memories of listening to this saga. And I will start next time with episode 157, Last in a Long Line, the first episode of the Leonard Meltsner saga. So that's something to look forward to. And in any case, that's all I have for this week, so I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. So, bye guys. Adventures into Odyssey is a fan podcast and has no affiliation with Focus on the Family or Adventures in Odyssey.